This is our third annual legislative breakfast, only one of which, as some of you will remember, have we been able to do in person. But we're so happy for this opportunity that we are still able to get together. We know your time is valuable. We recognize that you could be doing other things this morning. And so we are very thankful that you have taken the time to join us. Over the next hour, we intend to share some very important information with you and actually give you some thoughts and ideas about how you might be able to work together with us and talk to you about our programs and services. So at this point, I am going to acknowledge from the list that was provided. So these are Rsvps and those that that have indicated they were coming. We recognize there may be some not able to make it, and also that there may be others who have joined. And if we miss you, please kindly put your name in the chat, and we will make sure that the next speaker acknowledges you. Again, we thank all of you for joining us. State Representative Jeff Curry, East Hartford, Manchester, and South Windsor. Mayor Mike Walsh, East Hartford. State Representative Charlie Stallworth, Bridgeport. Karen Taylor, Director of Equity and Opportunity for the City of Hartford. Former Mayor and Town Councilor Suzette DeBeetham Brown, Bloomfield. State Senator Saud Anwar, East Hartford, East Windsor, Ellington, and South Windsor. State Senator Derek Slapp, Bloomfield, Burlington, Farmington, and West Hartford. State Representative Jane Garibay, Windsor, Windsor Locks. State Representative Julio Concepcion, Hartford. Deputy Mayor and Councilwoman Lisa Bress, Windsor. State Representative Jason Rojas, House Majority Leader, East Hartford, Manchester. State Senator Douglas McCrory, Hartford, Bloomfield, Windsor. State Representative Bobby Gibson, Bloomfield. State Representative Robin Porter of New Haven. And I would be terribly remiss. You see Melinda, many of you know Melinda, but I'd be terribly remiss if I did not acknowledge the team. This is not a one-person show by any stretch of the imagination. And I am so proud to have such a committed, dedicated, wonderful leadership team. At this time, I'm going to introduce them to you. So Kathy Zeiner is our Chief Operations and Strategy Officer. Maureen Sheridan is our Chief Financial Officer. Christina Gregoire is our Director of Human Resources and Training. Donna Shodapo is our Chief Program Officer. And of course, Melinda Johnson, Director of Community Engagement and Advocacy. Sharon Bellinger is our Director of Impact Communications and Strategic Marketing. Tina Gladden, our Interim Director, Early Learning and School-Aged Programs. Leah Flanagan, Manager, CEO and Board Relations. And I have to mention, she's not a member of our staff, but she kind of almost is, our consultant, Yvonne Davis, who's responsible mostly for our media connections. So at this point, it gives me great pleasure to turn this back over to Melinda Johnson, Director of Community Engagement and Advocacy. Melinda. Oh, Melinda, before you start, I'm sorry because I saw it pop up that Representative Kate Farrar has joined us. So I didn't see any other names. Maybe you will see some additional ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne, and good morning, all. We are so excited to have you all with us and for you all making this commitment during a cold and sinister, it almost seems, kind of day when it comes to the weather. But we are grateful for your presence here. You know, this has certainly been an interesting time in life for all of us. And for the YWCA Hartford region, actualizing our vision to become a community with unlimited opportunities, to unlimit opportunities, has been something that has taken a collective effort, and a collective effort mainly of our team in dedication, but certainly a collective effort of our partnerships. In 2021, in the midst of our second year within a pandemic, we truly learned that together we are unlimited. My colleagues are here today to give you a glimpse into some of our organizational success in 2021. First, we'll have with us Kathy Ziner.
Good morning. One of my responsibilities here is to oversee Soromundi Commons, our housing program. And Soromundi Commons is YWCA Hartford Region's part in the effort to end homelessness in Greater Hartford and across Connecticut. With an emergency shelter for women and permanent supportive and affordable housing. As you might imagine, the focus this past year has been on keeping our residents and our staff safe, particularly in this COVID environment. And in addition to the normal activities of enforcing and supporting masking and social distancing, our team also took trusted messenger training so that we could really work with our residents to help them understand the importance of testing and in vaccination. Ultimately, we got 90% of our residents vaccinated, and in our emergency shelter, we've only had one documented case of COVID since the beginning of the pandemic. So I'm really proud of our team and their efforts in keeping the folks that are with us safe. We were also very grateful to receive blankets and food and toiletries and other support from the community to help us keep folks inside the shelter rather than out where they could be exposed, and to make sure that they had the resources that they needed. We're also really grateful to many of you who helped support through city and state funding our ability to invest in additional masking and safety precautions to keep folks safe. But what was exciting was that the work that we were doing inside for our residents then became a platform for us to expand and help the greater community. We partnered with Charter Oak Health Center to offer testing, not just to our residents, but we had 3 testing clinics that were open to the community. We made, Adrian Cochran was able to make arrangements to have Dr. Edie from Trinity Health do a presentation on the vaccine and answer questions. We also offered a panel of experts about the vaccine to do something similarly and broadcast that widely. And that followed with a collaboration with CVS to promote their vaccine clinics at the Arroyo Center. And also, we ultimately were able to partner with the Village and Hartford Health to have 3 vaccine clinics here on site. Of course, the COVID pandemic offered other challenges, and those were challenges that face many of our participants related to mental health and substance use issues. And as in response to that, we really recognized that we needed to offer trauma-informed services and services that were designed to support our residents through those challenges. And so in response to that, we reorganized our staffing and brought it in-house rather than engaging some others, so that we could ensure that we were offering the kinds of services that our participants needed. So it's been an interesting journey, I will say, this last year, and one filled with challenges. But I'm really proud of our team and how they rose to the occasion. They exposed themselves and risked their lives each and every day being here to support our folks. And I'm also really proud that we could take the learning that we did in Soromundi Commons and share that with the rest of the community. So Tina, would you like to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing in our early childhood program?
Yes, so for families, we've provided families with and staff updated food distribution sites and vaccine and testing locations. We kept our families up to date on any changes with our COVID policies and procedures, so they knew that we were always keeping their children safe. Although COVID did change the way that our centers did run this year, the quality of care did not change. We had a big increase in social and emotional support for our children and shared resources with families. We scheduled monthly check-in meetings with our ELCs and kid-like programs to make sure that they knew that we were supporting them and we were supporting all their hard work. We dropped off little thank yous to help support them and let them know that we were still cheering for them. We also scheduled a mindfulness and meditation workshop for the ELCs and kids-link teams to allow staff to learn how to use mindfulness for self-care for themselves and in the classrooms. And finally, during professional development, we utilized trauma-enforced trainings to gain the understanding of how everyone was feeling and use that to understand how to better support them and the children and families during the pandemic. Thank you. Donna.
Donna.
Good morning. So we had a wonderful year aligning and strengthening both the civic engagement component of our YWLC program, which is our young leader, women's leadership corps. And we worked collaboratively across departments with Melinda and Terry. We launched our young governors program this past summer, and it was extremely successful. The reason why we really wanted to do that is running for office instills a larger sense of community and self-efficacy within our young women who are really aspiring to create change through representation. Last year or the year before, we did the 50-50 campaign, and we spoke a lot about representation and visibility of women within the political system and within their communities. This year, Melinda and Terry, through collaboration with our programs that serves young women ages 13 through 18, and our Summer Institute took it a step further. And they made sure that the young women understood what it is like to be a part of a campaign. And they operated the YWLC Teen Governors campaign and opportunity. This Teen Governors opportunity, the young women participated in a mock campaign, further developing their personal branding skills, public speaking, while exploring how their strengths, experiences, and skills position them for leadership roles like many of you are in today. And it starts young, when our young people need to see that this is something that they can do and it's for them. So the process included a campaign manager, selecting candidates, a team. So not only was it about the person running, but they also developed the skill sets and the strength of the bench. That is extremely important behind the individuals. So they had to develop slogans, candidate descriptions, LinkedIn profiles, that infamous headshot that is extremely important that will brand you in your profile picture, as well as the great debate. Not only is it about the back end and what you can do, but you also have to be able to have those strong communication skills to verbalize and communicate with your constituents and really sway them and prove why you are competent and why you deserve to be the next teen governor. And then we had election day. And then the individuals were able to take all of the information, review the LinkedIn profiles, the videos, and then understand and reinforce the importance of your vote. We had a very close election, and we actually had a teen governor and a lieutenant governor because it was that close, and just picking one position. But it just marks the importance of civic engagement, having your voice heard, and making sure that you are moving forward with active participation in the community. So thank you, Melinda and Terry, for that. And then lastly, we really dove into, it was an interesting year, Melinda said, but a really tough year for not only the girls we serve, but the women we serve. And workforce development really became to the forefront for the YWCA Hartford region. The COVID pandemic continues to exacerbate existing inequities within our system. And when it hit in 2020, having 2.3 million women leave the workforce, that's almost 53% of the workforce in the first 12 months. How do you recover from that? It's not an easy doors open and women just, move back into the workforce, what we're seeing now. And so the YWCA has a proven record of supporting women, both personally, their financial stability, and also their professional and career development and growth. And so that's what we're doing. We are launching our YW Career Women's Digital Skilling Program, which is going to partner with businesses and really curate an experience and a track to get women back to work in meaningful jobs so that they could be self-sufficient for themselves and for their families through accelerated technology training programs. We understand that the individuals most hit were those that had lack of that skill set and training. The state is working diligently to skill up Connecticut, and we've been a part of those conversations at the state level, and we're looking at how we can deepen that and have a greater impact by offering skill development training, a robust curriculum, coupled with strong business partnerships with HR offices to make sure that we can support the women not only in the job, but throughout the first year of their career. So we're really excited about that work. That capacity building work was made possible through a grant through YWCA, and it afforded us the opportunity to work with the Bridgespan group for 6 months and building out a comprehensive plan and model in terms of how we can provide greater value to the Hartford community in this digital skilling space to get women back to work, feeling comfortable, confident, and safe in terms of returning and providing for their families. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna, for that synopsis. And it's my pleasure to now introduce my partner in crime in our department, Terry Fitzgerald, our Advocacy and Outreach Coordinator.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So I'll start with our mid and end of year listening sessions, which we held for the community, where we heard important information about inequity in sports for women and girls and ending violence in the community. Through some of our educational tools, which are our civic engagement guide and our allies guide to advocacy, our community advocates discovered how to create change within their community by using these tools. During our Stand Against Racism initiative, advocates joined the press to declare racism a public health crisis here in Connecticut and won. During our quarterly community matters, we explored difficult topics ranging from the COVID-19 vaccination facts, back to school and youth mental health, and critical race theory. The community did come together for Remembering Our Mothers Who Mourn Community Candlelight Vigil, where we offered support and solidarity to mothers and families and due to the recent violence within the community. Our legislative wins this year, despite the challenges of a COVID year, were quite great, and we are happy to share some of those, which of course you all know. But we supported transformative legislation, which signed into law this year, including racism as a public health crisis, the Crown Act, diversity on state boards and commissions, and pay equity. So all in all, it ended up being a quite successful year where we got a lot accomplished despite the challenges of the year. And we do this, with your support as our leaders and with the community support.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
And so that is just a synopsis of some of the amazing work that YWCA Hartford region has accomplished in our last year. But now we're in 2022 and we're looking forward. And we're looking at what we can accomplish together with your support. Our advocacy efforts are outlined in our advocacy and policy agenda, which has been emailed to all of you. And before we move forward into this very important part of our conversation, I do want to take the opportunity to acknowledge a few individuals that have entered the room that are important to our partnerships. With us, we have Erin Crosby, Director of Women's Empowerment and Racial Justice at the YWCA Greenwich. We have Janice Fleming, who is a beloved friend of the YW and has played so many roles and capacities within our community and in the advocacy space. Senator Saud Anwar, who has been an ally to us in the push for declaring racism a public health crisis. Matt Reach, the press aide for the Senate Democrats. And we are excited that you all have been able to join us for this important part of the conversation. Now, as we get ready to move into our legislative policy priorities, our advocacy policy priorities, I do want to indicate to you that as we go through, you'll see that each of them are numbered. Some of you are familiar with our process because you were with us last year. They're numbered because it's our hope that at the end of us describing the efforts that we are looking to endeavor on, that when we go into our discussion with you about where you stand on the issue, that you will be able to vote with your fingers on the issues that also matter to you, that align with your agenda for the year, that align with what you're seeing with the districts that you serve and where your press and push will be. So take notice of those numbers as we go through this conversation. So our first issue is with great personal affect that I speak to this issue. It is the issue of childcare infrastructure, improving family economic security by strengthening the childcare infrastructure. I'm sure it is no news to anyone on this line what the deficits within the childcare system are as they stand, because these aren't just regional deficits. These aren't just state deficits. These are national deficits. The way that childcare is structured within our country is broken. And at the individuals that stand at the short end of that stick end up being families, middle-class families especially, who are striving to find high-quality childcare for their families, and the childcare workers themselves, the individuals who are coming every day and trying to provide that high-quality childcare for families while also needing to put food on their own table and recognizing that oftentimes they're not receiving a livable wage. So it is our efforts to continue to work with the Office of Early Child Care to secure childcare infrastructure reform here in the state of Connecticut, where families can receive high quality childcare and childcare workers in early learning centers, in daycares, can also receive a livable wage. There are two sides of this coin, and it is our hope that in this legislative session, that as you are doing the work of advocating for your constituents, that you would keep in mind the duality of the issue that we face. Our next issue speaks to how families are living when we speak about fair share and revitalization. So in collaboration with the Open Communities Alliance and the Fair Share Consortium, try to say that 3 times fast, we are looking at fair share planning and zoning and equitable urban revitalization. This too is an issue of duality. So when we talk about fair share planning and zoning, we recognize that all municipalities are required to have some form of subsidized housing, but how that's distributed and to what extent families are welcome and have the opportunity to choose for themselves housing that supports their family vision of success is often limited by other municipal restrictions. And so the Fair Share Consortium has devised a plan and has worked out and has looked at the statistics and the data of how Connecticut has spread our subsidized housing and how the urban concentrations of subsidized housing exist, and have come up with a few plans of how we can move forward to more equitably distribute that. Additionally, when we look at our urban centers, we recognize that as a direct result of redlining and what has historically happened within our urban centers, that the communities oftentimes lack the direct resources they need for families to be able to thrive. And so equitable revitalization calls for the resourcing and the investment into our urban settings to see that housing, not just housing, but other key elements of urban revitalization take place. Just pause for a minute. I see a question in the chat. Really appreciate the support of Fair Share. Yes, we are certainly on board with that. Thank you. All right, as we move to our third issue. For the last 3 years, the YWCA Hartford region has stood with and in support of improving maternal health outcomes for women of color by ensuring equitable access to reimbursable doula care services. And we are so grateful for the efforts of Senator Moore, who on last session assisted the coalition in making sure that on the books, there is a definition for a doula. And as small and as simple as that step sounds, that was one of the steps essential for the pathway, or for there to be a pathway carved out for reimbursable doula care services. The coalition is now in conversations with the Department of Public Health to further identify a pathway for reimbursement, but we are also open to and acknowledging that legislative support can be an essential tool in securing a pathway. Doula care improves health outcomes for both mothers and babies, reducing maternal morbidity amongst women of color. However, doula services, because they are not currently reimbursable through insurance, are hard to access for low-income families, particularly low-income women of color, who might be able to identify that they need that support. But because doulas have to eat too, much like childcare workers, doulas also have contracts where they need to receive a livable wage. And that might not be something that is accommodatable for women of color who are in low income situations. However, if we were able to move the needle so that reimbursement was a possibility, we can turn the tide of maternal morbidity for women of color here in our state. And more particularly for the heart of the YWCA Hartford region, we can turn that course for Hartford women in specific. Moving to our fourth issue. Regulating healthcare provided by the Department of Corrections. Connecticut is the only US state where the Department of Corrections runs its own medical care system. And I'll pause to let that sit on you for a while. What we have seen over the last couple of years is that in the absence of a contract with the University of Connecticut, DOC has maintained all healthcare, so including mental health care and physical health care. And what that means for inmates and for healthcare providers within those systems, again, looking at the duality of care, we see that there have been increased rates of cases of healthcare malpractice within the prison systems. We have also seen that healthcare workers are complaining about things like equitable ratios. So for the sake of safety, certain ratios need to be met. And so the coalition that we have gathered, we have worked with several community partners, several legislative allies who are on the line. We have come together to say that we need to address this issue during this short session. We need to make traction that changes these outcomes. You know, last year, our state did something heroic. We declared racism a public health crisis. But using that lens and understanding that declaration, we have to look at the way, not that just our current citizens are living, but how returning citizens are living. Returning citizens are coming back to our communities with increased health issues Returning citizens are coming back to our communities with health disparities that they didn't leave with. And they're also returning oftentimes without discharge plans to make sure that they have the care that they need to go forth. And so we are together calling for the regulation of healthcare provided by the Department of Corrections. Our fifth issue. Our legislative agenda this year is very unique because in time past, we ensured that we addressed our state priorities and what we saw as essential issues within the state of Connecticut. But this year, we have also added to this our local lens and 2 initiatives that we would like to push forward on a municipal level, as well as recognizing the power and the impact that we have as affiliates of a national body. And so the next items that you'll see are our local items, followed by our national agenda priorities. So equity for women and girls in sports. Equity isn't a game initiative. At the latter portion of 2021, we held a listening session with a variety of women who are participating, women and girls who are participating in sports. We heard from women at the administrative level, at the semi-pro and professional level, girls who are participating at a high school level and the college level. And at all levels, we heard that there were disproportionate disparities, including gender-based discrimination that takes place when we consider the amount of under-resourcing, when we look at the access to playing locations, uniforms, accommodations, opportunities, contracts, media coverage. But we also heard that on the other side of this, there was a lack of mental health supports within colleges for female athletes in particular. And so our Equity Isn't a Game initiative is an initiative that is a localized effort to work with local colleges and other systems where the sports and athletics is a component to talk about how we can cultivate a more equitable approach to sports. We are also working in partnership with the Yard Goat Stadium, with Tiffany Young at the Yard Goat Stadium, to expand the conversation of what it means for women to participate in sports, in hopes that we can cultivate a culture where girls see more opportunities for themselves. Our 6th agenda item, which is also a local initiative, began last year when we're talking about inclusive representation on municipal boards and commissions. The 50-50 campaign was developed in response to Public Act 21-49, which was in part had many components to it, but a portion of which spoke to the need to diversify state boards and commissions. So in efforts to promote equitable gender and racial diversity on municipal boards and commissions, especially those focusing on quality of life issues for all residents, we recognize that if the state was courageous enough to implement practices that can heighten the availability and the access to commissions and boards for people of color and for women, then what change, what significant change in the landscape and the culture of politics here in Connecticut we would be able to see if we were able to replicate this work on a municipal level. We are excited to say that we have had the commitment of Hartford to come alongside this effort, and we are in the process of gaining commitments from several other municipalities to move forward in this venture. YWCA Hartford region is committed to coming alongside on this journey, providing technical assistance in the spaces of evaluation through partnership, as well as training through partnership. And so we look forward to having a conversation, to our mayors that are on the line, to our town representatives, to our council people. We look forward to having a conversation with you in the near future about how you can participate in the 50-50 campaign. Our 7th issue is, again, a national issue where we are coming alongside our YWCA USA sister, our USA body, and we're calling for the reauthorization of VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act. The Violence Against Women Act and the reauthorization of this act is a critical step to expand protections for all survivors, breaking cycles of violence and ensuring survivors have access to the care and services they need. So we encourage our local representatives, we encourage our state representatives, and we urge our congressional leadership to put the pressure on our national body to see this through. Our eighth and final issue is declaring racism a public health crisis on the federal level. Racism as a public health crisis on the federal level is up as a resolution right now. There is a resolution in place or that has been offered up. And the transformative legislation that declared racism a public health crisis here in the state of Connecticut paved the way to address the existence of systemic racism and the resulting disproportionate health disparities among BIPOC communities. We stand with our YWCA USA urging Congress to declare racism a public health crisis in the United States and commit to establishing a nationwide strategy to address health disparities and inequities across all sectors and societies. So I know that has been a lengthy spiel, and certainly we have the facts and data to support the items that have been listed thus far, and we look forward to having those deeper conversations with you. But from what you've heard thus far, I do want you to take pause and take note of the numbers assigned to each of these issues. Because more than anything, as we lean on you for your leadership, we need to know where you stand on the issue. So there are three questions that we really have, and I know you all certainly have questions for us, and we will certainly open up space for that. But the first question that we have is, where do you see alignment or partnership on our priorities? If you can enter those numbers in the chat. So for example, you might be saying to yourselves, when it comes to the childcare infrastructure, that is an essential issue to my constituents. If that's the case, put a number 1 in the chat. If it's fair share and planning, equitable urban revitalization, put a number 2 in the chat. Improving mental health outcomes by ensuring equitable access to reimbursable doula care services, put a number 3 in the chat. Regulating healthcare provided by the Department of Corrections, 4. If you want to help us support our local issues when it comes to equity for women and girls in sports, 5. And promoting inclusive representation on municipal boards and commissions, 6. And if you are willing to take a further step and put the pressure on our congressional leadership to make sure that VAWA is reauthorized, 7. And to support the national resolution to declare racism a public health crisis, 8. All right, we see some numbers coming through in the chat. Don't be bashful. We will be following up with you. Awesome. And maybe you need some time to think about this and you need a further conversation. Then certainly please reach out to us. We want to have those conversations with you so that we can ensure that the well-being for women of color here in the state of Connecticut, and more particularly in the Hartford region, are at the heart of the work that we do this legislative session. Awesome. Moving to our second question, and this is the opportunity now for you to use the raise hand feature if you'd like to unmute and join in on the conversation. What concerns or obstacles do you foresee around our priorities? Anyone want to unmute? And as you're thinking about that, I'll say last year, Representative Porter, I do recall that you shared, this is our first time doing a virtual session. I don't know, how much we're gonna get done. And thank goodness that through courage and persistence, the work was done. And we can say here at the YW Hartford region that more than 80% of the issues that we put on our agenda last year were actually seen through. Wonderful, I'm seeing these hands raised. Call on you as I see them raised. So Jeff Curry, we see. Thank you, Representative Curry.
Hi, yeah, good morning, and really appreciate the presentation this morning. I have a quick clarifying question on priority number 5 with regards to girls in sports. Are you stating that your position is to uphold the current protections afforded by Title IX and the way in which they are being currently implemented?
Yes, so we are upholding the current protections, certainly, but we are also looking to build relationships when it comes to colleges and their Title IX representatives to talk about how those vague terms or terms that can be interpreted in many ways when it comes to gender-based discrimination, how those terms could be expanded into also considerations on how resourcing is allocated to women's teams.
So, okay, so I guess I'll just ask it bluntly. Are you supportive of trans girls participating in girls' sports?
That is a position that we are still actually having conversation about, to be transparent and honest with you.
Okay, I hope that's the direction that you are moving, and I am happy to partner with you and lay down on railroad tracks if that is the case. But I just wanted to, that's why your slide wasn't very clear. And so from your comment just now, it does sound as though you're all still working through that. And I'm happy to be a part of those conversations and help move the needle with you and your organization to get you to that point where you're able to simply state that that is a supportive move on your part. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And we are certainly nearing that curve. You know, in the matter of controversial conversations like that, it is important to be fully informed before making a public statement. And so we are in the process of becoming fully informed on the issue.
Absolutely. And one last comment, if you haven't yet, I would suggest reaching out to Glenn, I would say his last name wrong, over at CIAC. He has just finished his doctoral dissertation on this, as well as being the head of the athletic conference here in Connecticut. So he would be a fantastic resource for you all to just better educate yourself on this matter. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you for naming that. Senator Anwar, welcome.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Thank you for the entire YWCA family for your priorities and the work that you have been doing. It's beautiful and amazing things that you're doing. I'm going to push a little bit and share my thoughts on the doula issue. And I'll tell you what are the concerns. I know in the last session, it was front and center, and I recognize the value of this. And I also saw the midwife's role that has been increasing. But I just want to share perspective and give you some insight as well. What is happening is that the high-risk pregnancies, the best equipped individuals to take care of high-risk pregnancies are going to be trained, fully trained OB/GYN doctors. And there's data, there's proof, and so on. What we are seeing in the emergency room is that the midwives have actually, in the last minute, say, we can't do this. And in the middle of the night, they would actually send the patient to the emergency room who is about to die. And then they're critically ill because they have been holding on to those patients till the last minute, waiting for a miracle to happen and things would be fine. In the same way, what I am recognizing is that as we are advocating for doulas, it is almost creating a mindset that is going to take care of the trained individuals who are supposed to manage complicated and normal pregnancies should walk away because they have quote unquote midwives and doulas and everybody taking care of that part. And that's actually selling the community short. So as we advocate for this, I don't want to lose out on the reality that we are trying to find a solution because our communities are not being provided the care with trained OB/GYN doctors. And we are finding ways of advocating other things, but we should never, ever allow the actual care to be provided with trained individuals at this set. So we have to make sure that our communication is very clear, that we are not walking away from our need to get the best trained individuals taking care of our communities, irrespective of their abilities to pay and what their racial and ethnic and a socioeconomic background is. I hope I'm making sense.
Certainly. Thank you, Senator Anwar, for providing that clarity. So yes, doula, the profession of a doula is a non-medical profession. And I hear you that oftentimes the public narrative that goes forth can be confusing, and individuals think if you just have the doulas there, then you don't need the medical support. That is not the case. And that is not the narrative that this coalition is running. So we certainly recognize the need for both sides of that conversation to be had. Unfortunately, these conversations cannot take place in a vacuum. And I think that is also the effect that you are driving at in your remarks, that we can't just have the conversation about the needs of the doula support and the reimbursement for those doulas, but we also have to have the very informed conversation of the role and the importance of fully trained medical staff and the availability of that fully trained medical staff.
Right, and I'm just gonna add one more thing just so that you're aware. In our state of Connecticut, OBGYN doctors are leaving because the insurance, the malpractice insurance is so high that they actually feel that that it's not worth it to stay in a state whereby a situation that may not even be in their control, they will lose their homes, they will lose everything that they own. And because of those policies, they are moving to all other states. It's a matter of time that in the state of Connecticut, nobody would be able to have a child by birth with a trained OB doctor at the service. So we have a systemic issue between the malpractice insurance and people choosing to go to different places, which is obviously impacting everyone. So I think that may be another angle that we have to unite to make sure that we have a rehabilitation of how malpractice insurance is playing out in Connecticut.
Thank you, Senator Anwar, for that insight. Representative Rojas.
Thank you and good morning. I appreciate everybody being here and good to see my colleagues. I see Representative Porter still here and Representative Curry. I just really appreciate the priorities that you listed because it allows us to, there's been a lot of talk about systemic solutions to a lot of these issues that we face. And certainly, you know, the legislative process doesn't always lend itself to doing things in a big, dramatic, systemic way. So more often than not, we use incremental approaches to dealing with these issues, which is, I think, painful for everybody on this screen because we see so much harm when we take that incremental approach. I really appreciate the systemic view of this. I appreciate the fair share housing. I introduced that bill last year for the first time based on a New Jersey model of fair share housing and paid attention to the process of that bill. Obviously, it was incredibly politicized. There was a lot of misinformation about what the intent of that was. But again, that is a systemic approach to dealing with some of the housing issues and zoning issues that we face that really exacerbate all the inequities that we're all too well familiar with. And I think it's important that we continue to look at it. You know, I think part of the challenge I see, at least in answering the question, the obstacles is these are all long-term solutions and we need to continue to work on them. You know, what do we do in this immediate phase, you know, the next year or two, given what we know about the childcare crisis, what we know about Senator Anwar's comments about healthcare and access to healthcare and doula services. You know, what can we do in the short term that will be on all of your minds so that we can continue to take that painfully incremental approach while also focused on systemic issues. And will you be able to share PowerPoint too, if possible?
Yes, we will be able to send that out. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I do see a hand raised in the chat from one of our partner advocates, Janice Fleming Butler.
Hello, everyone. I appreciate all of the comments and the agenda that you're working on because although during session, I tend to focus on lobbying, many of you know that I'm the founder of Voices of Women of Color. And so a lot of these issues have been brought to our attention because of our partnership with the Y. And within our partnership with the Y, we may not agree on all of it. Like we have serious concerns about fair housing and how it was marketed. And we're concerned that there's a lot of attention being paid to a small amount of people and not looking at how to strengthen urban communities. So we're concerned about how the fair housing, fair share impacts our voting, impacts how our lines are drawn during redistricting, impacts how our children are dealt with in the communities in which they will live, in their school systems, in their public health, all of the things that we see with a lot of our children being bussed out. So we would love to learn more about what that is. I'm interested also in the doula because I was a doula, and I see doula's role as just as important as a doctor. And what I mean is the doctor is the profession and the doula brings comfort. And so I think that both of those can exist in the same space, recognizing that the medical industry are the professions. But I will tell you from personal experience, the reason why many women of color are looking to alternatives is because we haven't been treated fairly by our medical professions. You know, for 3 years, I've been feeling sick. I haven't known what it was. And I went to a natural pathologist who drew all my blood and found out that I was anemic, iodine deficiency, gluten, dairy, all of the things that the doctor I had for many, many years could have found. So if the medical industry is going to make the argument that we have to trust them because they're the professionals, then I think it's fair to say to them, then they not need to start testing Black women accordingly, like for all of the other things, because I also had found that I had a low case of Lyme disease. So these things I've been feeling for 3 years, he could not have identified. So I would really like to figure out how doulas and the medical industry could work together in that space, but more specifically, that the medical industry begin to look at Black women's health as a priority. And lastly, the criminal justice issues is something that we've always been engaged with the Y on. We think that Melinda, your leadership in that issue around racism, around the Crown Act, was so critical, and it brought national attention to where we are. And so I just look forward to working with folks during this legislative issue on a lot of this session on a lot of these issues, and particularly too, lastly, the athletic issue. I was a point guard. I play basketball. I swim. I'm an athlete. I remember when we had to share locker rooms with boys in order to play basketball. So I'm interested in seeing how the Y moves forward with that, especially with the question that Jeff Curry raised, because I think I still need education in that area as well. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Janice, for all that you do. And thank you for your comments and what you've provided to this conversation. For the interest of time, our final comments will come from the 4 hands that are currently raised in the person of Mayor Bronin, Representative Farrar, Senator McCrory, and Representative Porter. Mayor Bronin, thank you for joining us. We would love to hear from you at this time.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Melinda and Adrian, you and the intern. Real quick, I want to say thank you just for the advocacy work that you're doing, but that the YWCA continues to do. You know, the work providing shelter, supporting women, empowering women, teaching kids. I mean, we need that work now desperately. We need to help you expand it, and just wanted to start with a thank you for that. Proud to have partnered with YWCA on a number of the things that are on your list, and look forward to working with you together on it. The one thing that I just wanted to flag as something that I know is already top of mind for you, but I feel like there's an opportunity to really make progress this legislative. So of course, I'll defer to all the legislators who are on here, their judgment in the mental health, because I think everybody has been affected deeply by this pandemic, but we had a mental health crisis prior to the pandemic. And I think that is particularly acute where you have the intersection of poverty and mental health issues as well. And we desperately need to tackle that. And I think we also need to tackle mental health challenges as part of the criminal justice conversation. You know, I think when we see young people committing criminal acts, we need to recognize that are real traumas and real mental health challenges. And if we want to effectively respond to that, deal with that from a health perspective. And I do think that given all the conversation around mental health and criminal justice right now, there's an opportunity to really make some progress on that issue. And I know I'd love to work on that with you and with any of the legislators here. And of course, I think those issues broadly affect a whole lot of women and girls in our community and across the state. So look forward to working across the agenda, and grateful for your work and a chance to be here. But I just wanted to flag that one as one that I think needs to be on the list.
Thank you, Mayor Bronin, and thank you for raising the importance of that issue. We will deeply take that into consideration. Representative Farrar, good to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Melinda and team. So nice to see each and every one of you, and my colleagues at every level. It's nice to see everyone. A couple kind of questions and then comments. First off, I echo my colleague, Representative Rojas' notes on, I really appreciate everything here that is focused on the true systemic change to eliminate racism, empower women, and that's really inspiring to see this morning. I actually had a question particularly about your work with housing, because one of the things I think we saw during this crisis, especially with the impact primarily of the crisis on women and women of color, is data kind of pointing to that women of color specifically have greater eviction rates and are facing a deeper housing crisis. So I'm kind of curious how you all have seen that in your daily work, and how that plays into the fair share proposal that you're suggesting.
So fair share itself, again, the concept of the fair share proposal is to first address the concept of subsidies and how those subsidies are regulated per municipality. And then the urban revitalization, the equitable urban revitalization conversation is more to take a centered look at our urban settings and what it means to have, to set up an urban life where families can thrive. One of the first things that we are looking to have conversations on are internal environmental factors of healthy living. So when we look at a house, what are those internal environmental factors like lead, like asbestos, like radon? What are those internal factors that we might need to take another look at how those things are regulated? When it comes to the rates of women who are disproportionately displaced, evicted, and so on and so forth, in our particular work at the YW, we see how that affects the numbers that we then have within our Soar-Mundi Commons. And so we are the direct recipients of those family members. And those aren't, the rates might have changed, but those aren't new facts, unfortunately. And so we have had the testimonies of individuals that have lived at Soar-Mundi Commons who have gone on to live thriving lives. And what we are recognizing is that if we are able to change the conversation around subsidized housing, then families might have the opportunity to shift as they desire to other areas and live and thrive there. And so right now what we're looking at is that portion of the conversation, though we recognize the factors of women of color in particularly being disproportionately displaced is an essential factor into why this is an important conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that, because you're seeing obviously the effects of us not addressing the root causes of these deep-seated issues. So I appreciate that. And just two other quick things. One, to Representative Curry's point, happy to be an ally and supporter as you look closely at equity in sports. Transgender girls are girls, and I think as a more inclusive lens for our athletics is kind of key for our communities moving forward. And then my final question to you was, we work so closely together on all of the diversity on boards and commissions work at the state level. And I just wanted folks to hear who are here, how can we be effective advocates for that at the local level? You noted the local campaign that you're trying to wage, but how can we kind of share that with folks that we might know at the local level?
Mm-hmm. So we're looking really to have a three-part effort. If it was a game plan and we're playing basketball, we'd talk about a three-part press, right? And so on one side, we are looking to galvanize public support. And so we'll be looking to expand our outreach and our organizing in that space to begin to talk to communities of color and ask them what representation on those boards and commissions would look like for them, what impacts they would be able to see from that. We're also knocking on the doors of mayors, council individuals, having the conversation about why this work is important. And then when it comes to legislative leadership, you know the municipal leaders in your space, in the districts that you serve. Being able to have the conversation of why the work that's being done on a municipal level to reflect the work that's being done on a state level can change the culture of how politics are run in our state is essential. So we just encourage you all to definitely sign on so that as we're having conversations, you can help us be a part of that press.
Thanks, Melinda. Great to see you again and happy to be a partner on all of that.
Always good to see you.
Yeah.
Senator McCrory.
Hey, Melinda, how you doing?
I'm all right.
Thanks for, that's a good thing, sister. And everyone here at the YWCA, thanks for inviting us. I'm gonna be very brief. I'm just gonna bring a sense of it. And I heard my colleagues speak about housing. I'm gonna give a sense of reality and be a real sense of honesty to this conversation about affordable housing and fair share. It's good. We need you. We need your voice, because the reality is in Connecticut, there are so many people, and not just people, even colleagues of mine are really comfortable with the status quo. They're just really comfortable with where we are, and doing something about it. It sounds good. People will say the right thing, but when it's time to make those, they will clam up. And this is a situation that's been going on for a long time. We've been looking at this for years. And you notice if nothing changes over 5, 10, 20 years of periods, it's intentional. So we need your voice to push us, push my colleagues to do something about affordable housing and not just have it all clustered up in urban communities, because that's where it is. And it's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. Everyone's at fault. Lastly, I want to mention the issue of mental health. Again, this issue has been going on for a number of years and it has been highlighted by COVID-19. I'll give you an example in my district. We're at a point, and I'll just speak in the Black community. One thing we never did with all the 400 years of what we experienced in this country, we always persevered and never took our own lives. What you're seeing now is not just African-American people, but our children as young as 13 years old can't handle the situation and are taking their lives. It's happened in our community. It's been quiet, but people in the know. We have a huge issue with mental health and social emotional learning in our community. And lastly, I support Doula. I just can't, it troubles me when I'm a historian. 100, 150 years ago, women with no education at all, none. Not only were they the doula, they were not doctor at the same time because they were delivering babies, their babies and other people's babies. So I just don't understand how after 100 years, 150 years, all this education out there, all this new technology, we're in a situation where Black and brown women cannot have babies and losing their babies at the rate they are. That I'm supporting you guys. You know I'm always a supporter. I need your voice. We need your voice to affect change, not just in the greater Hartford community, but in the entire state of Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McCrory, and thank you for raising those issues. We will definitely take those into deep consideration in our work. Last but certainly not least, the legislative champion of the Crown Act, Representative Porter. It is good to see you in this new year.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. Good to see you as well, Melinda. A huge thank you to you and your team. Always a great partnership that we've shared. I look forward to moving through 2022 with an even better and stronger partnership with you all. And as you know, I agree with a lot of things that have already been said by my colleagues. And I'm definitely on board for numbers 1 through 4, you know, where you're looking for the state to weigh in. And I think they all carry a significant amount of weight. And I'll just talk a little bit about, you know, the childcare infrastructure, because that's one of them that I'm really interested in, because we know that there were many more women than men that left the workforce, some by choice, but many not by choice, and are still out of the workforce. Women are still the majority of the women who are unemployed. So childcare infrastructure is a huge critical factor. And if we're going to get women back to work and get our economy back strong and revenues flowing through this state, that is critical. The other thing that really piques my interest, all of it does. I agree with, I really agree with what Senator McCrory just said, but I absolutely hear the concerns of Senator Anwar from a professional standpoint. Black women, you know, maternal and infant mortality, highest rate among Black women. And I've had the blessing of actually being present, you know, during the birth of both my godchildren and my grandson. And I can tell you that's really what I took my responsibility to be, a comfort, knew nothing about the medical aspect. I think they both can go hand in hand and pair quite well with the proper education and understanding. And I think that there needs to be a focus on, you know, let's be honest, the racial lens and why this is important to Black women and why we feel neglected when we go to the doctor's office, why we're diagnosed later with cancer. You know, by the time they catch our cancer, it's stage 3, stage 4, and women have been complaining for years and being, oh, that's menopause, oh, that's this, and kind of just totally dismissed and disregarded. And the last thing I will say, because I know we have passed the hour, is that number 4 is another important issue when you talk about DOC and healthcare. And I think that it's very important that this year, myself and my colleagues really look at an ombudsman, because I think that's going to be important as far as transparency goes and making sure that the checks and balances are put in place, especially when you have a lot of people profiting off of the prison system. And the fact that COVID has really made it much more layered and less transparent when it comes to keeping up with the well-being of folks that are being incarcerated in this state. So yes, and the fair sharing plan, and that is absolutely important. I was glad to hear our majority leader talk about that and that being a priority as well, because we know I'm in Newhallville down in New Haven, and I can tell you everywhere I look, they are building. And even in my district in Hampton, they're talking about moving a community center and actually replacing it with more housing. And I'm pushing back because I don't believe that our communities need more housing. We need more affordable housing. And when we talk about affordability, we need to make sure that that AMI is actually corresponding with the community in which the developers are coming to build. We have to make sure that it's reasonable according to the people that currently live there and not the people you're looking to bring there. So I will close there because I could go on, and we will have our sidebar conversations about all of this. But I want to thank you all for taking the time to make sure that you brought these priorities before us for our consideration for policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Porting. I look forward to those follow-up conversations. So we certainly had several other questions, but we are going to forego those questions and turn this back over into the hands of our CEO for our closeout. Thank you all.
Thank you, Melinda. A wonderful job as always. For those of you that did not get the opportunity to pose your question, we invite you to continue to be in dialogue with us. Please know through our Community Matters, excuse me, through our live lunch and learns, we are going to explore these topics and many more. Everything that's been discussed here today is important to you, it's important to us, and it's important to our mutual constituents. We have to be about the community, and that's absolutely what YWCA Hartford Region stands for. For our members of the Connecticut General Assembly, we thank you so much for your time, and we can assure you, you will see us testifying. You're going to see written testimony, press events. We're going to continue to move forward. Excuse me, allergies. We're going to continue to push forward. So thank you for everyone who came and who was able to stay. We wish you a wonderful rest of the day.